do it? Are we live?
Hey everybody, welcome to another corner conversation on Judges.
Part 3.
Part 3. Going to Gideon.
It's the same thing again.
I was gonna say, how you feeling, Greg?
Oh,
No,
man.
this one's got dog
Gideon
pictures.
and Deborah are very different from each other.
Same thing.
Do you?
She went for it. He's like, no,
I mean, this is a real question for you. Like,
Rich, it says it's not allowing your
It's
browser.
not
to record.
allowing my browser to record.
Oh,
It is
awesome.
now. You should be good.
Can I
No,
come,
you left.
can I come back
Yeah.
in? While
We'll
things
keep
are
going while
on?
Rich figures out his life.
Help me!
we can hear you. We
Yeah,
just
I
can't
can
see.
microphone.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Which is
That's
probably a
better
good
for
thing.
everyone.
Oh, that was
Same.
harsh.
Uh,
Actual recording is higher quality.
Welcome back, Richard.
Thank you.
It's good to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I think.
Is interest of life? Some people like there's the spectrum. Like, is interesting life always different? Like, often people will say, "I love my job. It's different every day," and some people would say, "I love my job because it's predictable. It's always the same."
Mm.
So where are you on that swing?
Planned difference.
Land difference.
I like different, but I need to know that's happening ahead of time.
Kim?
Where am I?
Yeah.
I need to know. I like plans.
You want your every day to be nearly the same.
Yes, but that is so difficult with children. Like, you can't.
You have
So,
kids?
3.
Hmm.
Every time I say my kids, I'm like, sorry, not mine.
The ones I'm raising.
Just
Help raising.
not raising these children. No, it just is like
Nanny.
children are nannying. Children are sorry to clarify. It's just unpredictable. Like, I could be having a great time, and then 5 minutes later, someone will throw up on me. So I'm like, that was fun.
Okay.
So,
Rachel?
I like it all over the place. Like, I just,
Every day be different. Chaos.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
I'm okay with chaos, which is like
It's so
Mike and I talk about that a lot because he's very anti-chaos, and I grew up pretty chaotic, so like that's what I know and I'm used to, and so I can respond quickly to chaos. And like when things are going over here and suddenly we have to change, like that's my sweet spot. Crazy, I do crazy well.
Do you? Yeah, because there's a difference between there always being chaos and liking chaos.
I like it.
it's familiar. It's one of those things like, I know how to function
Yeah.
in this space.
Yeah, and I can. Yeah, I feel like when other people struggle with chaos, I'm like, no,
This is my
I
spot.
can do this.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I love change. Like, when new things happen, it's exciting to me, but I would prefer a structure to the week, but then within that structure for things to be different each time, or else I get bored. And every once in a while, if there's a big, crazy change, like, I enjoy that.
I like to take control in the chaos. That's it. I don't mind it. I don't feel any pain in it. I'm just like, we're gonna figure this out. That's fine.
And I think I feel like I like to take control of the chaos too, but I don't want somebody else to control me in the chaos.
Yeah.
Which is
Like, almost like I need to be alone.
Tight hug.
I-
Tight hug.
Yeah. Let me do this.
No, that makes sense.
10 years ago, Rich was change all the time. Structure is confining, but I've been married to Anna for 7 years, and
Yeah.
I've learned that structure can be good.
I feel like you and I have some similar experiences.
Yeah.
Our spouses are both
Yes.
similar personalities, and we're similar personalities. So
Mhm.
things you say, I feel,
Mhm.
understand.
Well,
I like Greg's face right now. I'm just laughing.
is it frozen? Nope. His eyes are moving. His eyes are moving. I do think as we go into Judges and it is a tight repeat of things are going pretty good, things are falling apart, things have really fallen apart far from God, and like that line that happens every time is they repented, they cried out to God for help, and it's usually before that there's like this string of years. They'll say after 20 years, after 10 years, and we're getting at 7, I think it's 7 years, they go, man, we need help. And I'm just like, a year is a long time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
also,
under
I can also feel the Rachel line that in the midst of everything exploding, you just for 20 years going, it's fine.
We'll
then-
be all right.
and then finally going, no, this something should change.
That might take 20 years.
And the focus of this book is not to defame the Israelites. It's not to elevate the judges. It's not to make people feel bad for being in the cycle. It's the point of the whole book is to say something needs to change. And it's beautiful that we're doing this going up to Christmas because this is really a celebration of the Messiah. And it's such a weird paradox. I don't think many people would say, for our leading up to Christmas series, let's go to Judges, but it does. It points towards the need for Jesus. And repetition is a great way to make a point, and it's also a great way to make Greg disappointed.
Yeah, that's fair.
I got it.
Uh-huh.
I love Gideon because it's Deborah and Jael were the story of the unlikely hero, and then now Gideon is the story of the incapable hero, which is again to point towards God. And I don't know why I like looking in the face of incapability.
I don't know why you do either.
I like it. I feel like he still is.
I don't want to be
unlikely.
around that.
You're like, go away. I feel like Gideon still is unlikely because he over and over again says he's the weakest.
Yeah.
He's the least. Why would you choose me out of
So
anybody?
whiny.
But
He
the,
is a little
Yeah.
whiny.
but the difference between Deborah was the leader of the Israelite people. She was incredibly capable
Yeah.
and
And
as a hero. Yeah.
walked in that.
And now the double plot twist where the hero being the wife of Moses's brother-in-law, and it being an outsider betrayer's wife. That's an interesting plot twist. But the difference in it being Gideon was not capable. Now at the end of it, it's again you get all the way to the end of the Gideon story. There's a moment where they go, Gideon, you should. The line is that we want you to be our king, and Gideon has a moment of it's beautiful. It's beyond him, but he goes, God should be our king.
Yeah.
And then he goes, but if you could throw some perks my way, that'd be great. I don't need to be king, but that is what a foundational thing that there's a difference between being competent and still not necessarily being the hero and being completely incompetent and being the hero. And that points to, again, Gideon, they fell back into the cycle. And it didn't change. They still were spiraling away. But the hope in a Messiah, the greater change, is that even when it's unlikely, even when it's Jesus is a picture of not being overpowering strength, being this born as a baby and the least of the least. But that again, even it wasn't Gideon, but it is going to come through this picture of fragility.
I also really I feel like this is similar to kind of the Moses story where God is pretty, I don't know, he puts up with, Greg is like, you're so whiny, but God somehow puts up with it. Even with the wanting to be, Gideon, I feel like he's like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Over and over again.
Because Gideon wasn't sure.
Right. But, God didn't, I feel like in the story, it wasn't like God was like, all right, fine, forget it. You're not sure, so we're just going to move on. I feel like he's patient and he's willing to, what is the fleece where it's wet on one side and then the next day you have to flip it over and then it's
good.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me one more time or
Yeah.
over and over again, Joshua, it's the be strong and courageous reminder. And I don't know, there's just lots of reminders in these stories where I think sometimes I feel like if I'm not confident immediately or if I don't obey right away or step into that right away, God's just going to be like, well, I tried, never mind.
Yeah, I do feel like there's also something about this is so human.
Yeah.
Is that it's not this is a big thing that he's being asked to do. So stop. It is. It's a huge this is a unrealistic task again where it's are you sure? Because like a lot of people's lives are at stake. My life is at stake. Like, I don't think I'm being unreasonable by asking for multiple signs. Like, yes, it can sound whiny,
Yeah.
but again, it's like, that's so
it is a
human to be
stereotype.
like, I need to know for sure. Like, how can we like, did you like get confirmation for that? Did you like, who else have you talked to about this?
But the repetition inside of this individual narrative is to show that confidence and boldness and all these things, they are fleeting, and they have a cycle inside of it as well. And so beautiful thing in that, and to bring it to our own lives, is that you can have a moment where you go, God is doing it, it's incredible, and then you just realize that the next moment you might go, and it's over, and I failed, and I can't do this. And then there might be, again, you might have a moment of just going, I can see it, but also to have a moment where you say, how was that possible that I even said that I can see it, and now I don't? And in the victory and the point, the repetition in Scripture of God providing victory is not necessarily tied to incredible people having constant perfection or constant confidence. And that, again, something needs to change. This is not elevating the judge and definitely not elevating the people, but it's pointing towards the character of God in this, is that he has this degree of incredible patience in the midst of our struggles in it. And the spiral in Judges and the thing that needs to change isn't necessarily it's not about fixing all the people. It's like, what is going to be added to this narrative? And humanity is still like Gideon, is still like Deborah, it's still like Ehud, all these people that, again, it's beautiful, but it didn't, a moment of getting it didn't fix it. Something else has to change. And I feel like a lot of Christian pressure is to, personally and then externally as well, is that I've got to really force myself and others to get it. And how's that working?
It never seems like that's the answer in Scripture, which I don't know how we've missed that for so many times.
In the story of Gideon, it's very important that the victory would be seen as God's victory. And I bring like all of like that get it thing. It's like, it's really important that you get it. That makes you, again, elevates you as the hero. But as opposed to, it's really important that you realize that you're probably not going to get it. But God, the victory's God's. That is that's opposite. Those are polars.
It's like in those, like you were saying, in that daily feeling, like 1 minute you celebrate, you're like, oh, and then you quickly forget. Like, how do we put that in our perspective now? And I always I think of Greg. You said this a while ago. Always looking to see what God is doing, and not really be thinking so much about ourselves, but always reflecting on what God is doing. And like when we take that into our daily perspective, things don't feel as fragile. They don't feel like it's just based on what I can do and what, like what failure I made this week, and which is something that is constantly playing in my mind is, where did I fail, And so I'm not going to cry on this podcast.
Wow.
But yeah, just keeping that in focus, like, okay, in this moment, in this situation, when things are going well, what is God doing? What is God doing? When things are not going so well, what is God doing? How do we just keep putting that in perspective and that in the forefront of our mind?
Well, the point of this narrative is that Gideon goes from the least doubting, then he blows this trumpet, and he builds this army of 30,000 people, that's remarkable. Which, in that measure, am I doing well? Can be like, right. Gideon actually was doing really well.
Yeah.
And that, again, so.
And then what happens to you when you go from being so lacking any confidence to building this army of 30,000, and then because Gideon kind of goes off the other end where, I can't remember the end, but isn't there some at the end of his story he does some not healthy things?
Yeah, because that was happening even in as the army is drawn together,
Right.
is that God's response. You're gonna think this victory was yours,
Yeah.
and so what happened, and this is such a short period of time from I am hiding from the Midianites. I'm threshing. I'm preparing my grain in a wine press because I don't want the Midianites to know I'm afraid. To an army of 30,000 people, and God goes, you're going to think this victory is yours. To then, again, so what is God's response in that is that not I'm going to cut you down to size, but it is a perspective of like this. Again, what is something that needs to change in this is that I have to realize that my salvation, my connection to God, my freedom of the grace that's found in this cycle is not by my doing. And so that's why Gideon goes to his army and he goes, God said that I'm supposed to let everybody go who's afraid. And 2/3 leave, 20,000 leave.
Yeah.
And then he goes, all right, now you need to take them to the water. You have 10,000. And then you're going to, those that lean down and like a freak lap up the water like a dog. Because, every time I look at my dogs drinking, I go, that looks really efficient. I should, this coffee is really good. Like, never. And so the remarkable is that out of 10,000 people, that 300 actually drank that way. And so, but to then God goes, all right, now you're going to have some jars, some torches, and a trumpet, and you're going to scream for God and Gideon, and it's going to be great. Again, that it had to be a moment of God giving the victory, and it was no longer his ability to. It put him back to the fearing the Midianites.
Yeah.
But in the midst of that, God gave victory, and so as I walk into my own life, I have to wrestle with this: is that so much of my energy and effort can go to being proficient, sufficient, having everything's together, as opposed to going, it's not to defame myself, but I do want God's power, His provision, His direction. Yeah, it's good.
It's Gideon this week.
Gideon.
What's next week?
Abimelech? Am I saying that right?
Sure.
Abimelech.
Elimelech.
Oh, we
Levi Lamech.
Abimelech. He's a struggle.
What is Greg's word? You blip, 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 blip.
See you guys next week.
That's